All right, I think we're going to get going here now. So first, hello, horticulture lighting enthusiasts, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Stuart Berjanski, and I am the technical director here at the DLC. Outreach and collaboration with stakeholders is one of our main values and central to our work. As such, we had planned on having an in-person horticulture summit this year, but due to COVID-19, we had to transition to a virtual format. So please bear with us if we hit any technical bumps during the webinar transition points. Today is the first of 3 webinars. The other 2 will be in the next 2 months. So there are 2 main goals of these webinars. First is to increase awareness of the DLC's horticultural lighting technical requirements and qualified products list. And the second is to help accelerate the adoption and acceptance of utility rebate programs to support energy savings for indoor grow projects. All in the context of horticultural lighting metrics, throughout the Horticulture Webinar Wednesday series, you will be provided with utility perspective on the development and implementation of different approaches to constrain energy use, and also industry challenges and best practices for energy efficiency and energy savings in CEA facilities. Today's webinar, Evolution of the DLC Horticultural Lighting Specs and Rebate Program Models that Support Market Adoption. Yes, I know, it's a mouthful. Will take place during this first hour. And for those that had previously registered for the working group, this session will be followed immediately with a 1-hour working group discussion on access to rebates. During the presentation, feel free to use the chat box to pose questions to the panel, or if you prefer to speak your question, please wait until the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Also, I want to advise everyone that today's webinar will be recorded and posted by Friday on the DLC website. So if we go to the next slide. Our moderator today is John Wilson from the Lighting Design Lab at Seattle City Light. John has worked in the utility industry for over a decade and has comprehensive experience designing and implementing efficiency programs. John has worked regionally and nationally with industry partners to lead and support investment in emerging technologies and market research. Since 2007, he has also worked with craft producers to increase awareness of energy consumption and to support emerging technologies in the indoor ag space. As Stakeholder Solutions Manager for Lighting Design Lab, John works on behalf of member utilities to proactively engage industry partners with the goal of facilitating technology transfer and supporting utilities in their goal to create a positive customer experience. So now I would like to welcome John, who's going to take us through the rest of the slides.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stuart, for that introduction, and thanks to the DLC team for creating this opportunity to get us all together today, and thanks to everybody joining us wherever you are to be a part of this. You know, there really is no substitute for the sort of in-person events, whether that's conferences, learning, you know, or trainings. But I know I certainly appreciate this event being drawn together and giving us a reason to collaborate and just connect. So hats off to DLC for that, and thanks everybody for joining. You know, all I can say to tack on to that little intro that Stuart gave is that the coolest part of my job is that I get to work with a lot of tremendously smart people from all over, you know, not just the country here, but from across North America, I'll say. And that's a great segue that will lead me right into introducing the 3 speakers who are going to be presenting today. The first speaker you're going to hear from is DLC's very own Casey Holland. He's the technical manager of the Horticultural Lighting Program and focuses on quality of light for the DLC's solid state lighting program. Before joining DLC, Casey was a graduate research assistant at the Lighting Research Center, working on various projects ranging from 3D printing applications to lighting control system efficiency analysis. Casey holds an MS in lighting from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute and a BS in engineering physics from Stephen F. Austin State University. After Casey, you're going to hear from Doug Opedal, my fellow colleague, coming to you live from Portland, Oregon here. So shout out to Portland. Doug has 35 years in the electrical and lighting field, including journeyman electrician, estimator, and project manager for commercial and industrial projects. As lighting specialist for a large utility in Portland, Oregon, he completed energy analysis reports and identified energy savings opportunities for lighting and lighting controls for commercial and industrial customers. More recently, Doug has been instrumental in the successful design of the Energy Trust of Oregon's Indoor Agricultural Lighting Incentive Program. And this is cool, folks. This next line, I had to read this twice. Since its inception, he has worked with over 150 growers on lighting system upgrades around Oregon, assisting with energy efficient upgrades from lighting technologies, from legacy technologies to LED. He has also provided numerous trainings and spoken at a variety of controlled environment agriculture conferences, as well as other events that focus on lighting applications and utility incentive program options for indoor ag. Awesome, 150 projects, wow. And our last speaker, bringing it home strong before we cut to group conversation and questions, which we are gonna encourage you all to participate in, is Tad Bieksma. Tad has performed over 100 facility condition audits for schools and other buildings, including investment grade audits, energy audits, and ASHRAE level 1 and 2 audits during his 15 years in facility services. Tad functioned for 6 years as a project manager on school facility construction projects over $10 million. In addition to his work with schools and government facilities, Mr. Bieksma has conducted extensive research on agricultural technology, including horticultural lighting, grain dryers, robotic milking stations, and much more. As well as being an AEE certified energy auditor and certified energy manager, Tad is a certified measurement and verification professional. Excuse me. You know how our industry, we love to make the acronym, pull out the big names and acronyms. We got a heck of a group here today. Really great group. These bios paint the picture, but I know these folks are going to bring it home in their presentation. So I am going to get out of the way here and let our first speaker take it over. Thank y'all. Look forward to the questions.
All right, thanks, John. I'll go ahead and share my slides. So I'll be kicking things off just by introducing some of the horticultural lighting metrics and measures that are going to come up in the next two speakers' slides to help you guys be more familiar with those, and as well to really help facilitate the conversation that we're going to have in the breakout groups after this, so that we're all kind of on the same page and there's not any new words for people, or at least you'll have heard it one time before that. All right, so I'll move on to my next slide and talk about the beginning a little bit, right? So as you all know, plants and humans spend a lot of time out in front of the sun, and that led us to developing photoreceptors for specific spectral ranges. For humans, that range is between 380 to 770 nanometers, and it's basically all what we see through our eyes, right? It's the visible light spectrum. And the human eye is not equally sensitive to all wavelengths and measurements across this range. It's a big curve, right? Mostly peaking in the green region. And basically all of our lighting metrics for human lights has to do with this V lambda weighting function. And that's where we get lumens and luminous flux and illuminance and all of these kind of things. It all ties back to the lumen, which comes from that V lambda weighting function. For plants though, if you haven't heard, they're not actually using human eyes as receptors for light. And the bulk of the energy that they consume is within that same range though, right? And that's because they developed under the same sun that we did. So they're most sensitive to electromagnetic radiation between 400 and 700 nanometers. This range, as defined by ANSI Asabi S640, is the range of photosynthetically active radiation. And that's the range of wavelengths essentially that plants use for photosynthesis. And if you're not familiar with it, photosynthesis is essentially the process in which plants take in light energy and convert it into chemical energy, and it helps them with their development and growth. But unlike humans, which have a weighting function and different sensitivities across this range, there's no real weighting function for plants. So from 400 to 700 nanometers, the full range within PAR, it's pretty much equally useful for photosynthesis. And PAR is a measure result can be reported in many ways. Some of these ways is at the luminaire level. The measured result of PAR can be reported in measures like photosynthetic photon flux, or photosynthetic photon intensity distribution, or photosynthetic photon efficacy, to name a few. PPF, the photosynthetic photon flux, is the metric or measure that describes the total light output per second in the PAR range, and it's in micromoles per second. Essentially, how I think about this is how much light is coming from the source, without any direction or specific granularity outside of knowing that it's PAR, it's photosynthetically active flux. Another one is the photosynthetic photon intensity distribution, or PPID, and that essentially describes the direction and the intensity of light that's leaving the source, also in that PAR range. And that's in micromoles per second per steradian. This is essentially how much light and in what direction is it all going. And then lastly, and this is a pretty important one for us, it's PPE. It's the photosynthetic photon efficacy, and it describes how efficiently a luminaire takes the electrical power and converts it to photons, specifically photons that help induce photosynthesis. And that's what we use to kind of characterize how efficient a light source is. But not just luminaire level measures. PAR measures can also be reported at the application level. And these are typically done through measures like photosynthetic photon flux density, or PPFD, and the daily light integral, or DLI, where PPFD describes the density of the light on the area of interest in the PAR range, essentially how much light is hitting the canopy in a given instant. And DLI describes that total amount of density of light in the PAR range on the task plane over a 24-hour period. And using these and knowing your crop's needs for DLI and how you might be able to schedule how much light they're getting and over specific periods of time is super critical, no matter what lighting technology you're using. And it's definitely crop specific. For the DLC, we rely on these luminaire level PAR type measures like PPF, PPID, and PPE. And our whole notion behind that is that well-designed horticultural lighting products really have the potential to save energy and while optimizing plant growth and health. So making sure that we're taking these industry standardized metrics and relating them back and validating performance claims, and making sure that there's not any crazy snake oil claims that's going on, and really providing a level of reliability and comfort with knowing what products you're using and the performance that's associated with them. And our testing and reporting requirements associated with these PAR related measures allow manufacturers to list products onto our horticultural lighting qualified products list. And that Horticultural essentially serves as an objective third-party verified list that helps all different types of stakeholders, whether it's with product selection or determining eligibility for utility rebates wherever they may be available, or for utilities to help them feel like they can really validate upfront their energy efficiency savings estimates and help them meet their energy efficiency goals. But we often hear from our stakeholders all across the board that industry standardized measures that all relate to PAR, and how PAR comes back to only 400 to 700 nanometers is really limiting, and that's not all that plants care about. And this is something that I really want to drive home with and kind of end my piece on, is that, as a DLC, we do point to industry standards that come from bodies like, or standards producing bodies like ASABI, the American Society of Agricultural and Biological Engineers, as well as the Illuminating Engineering Society, to make sure that these metrics are vetted and industry approved and accepted, and that research informs them. And while I am happy to hear you guys and to try and work through these types of considerations for beyond PAR, the biggest thing that I'd like to encourage you guys to do is to reach out to and work with these industry standards developing bodies to help advance metrics if you think they're inappropriate, and to really help move the industry forward as a whole. And with that, that is my last slide. So thank you. Feel free to reach out if you have specific questions, or chat now or at the end of this panel. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hey, thanks, Casey, for that great presentation, and John for the introduction. This is Doug Opedal coming to you live from the Pacific Northwest. And hey, I'm really looking forward to the next few webinar series, attending those. Thanks for the invitation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of what we experienced in the Northwest for controlled environment agriculture, which is the new buzzword for indoor grow. So a lot of this, I'll be showing some old technology, and just keep in mind, I'm not necessarily promoting, but just kind of telling a story. And for the utility members out there, this might be something beneficial and something to consider when your states are voting in cannabis, but this is not just about cannabis. It's about leafy greens, decorative plants, greenhouse, and indoor. A little bit on types of incentives for this market, and kind of following our path of lighting in general for utility programs. There's the custom option, which we've worked a lot with this, and I think it works well for new technologies and new markets. It's a way to test what real costs are, because usually they're higher, so they settle down after a while, and then you can kind of come up with a prescriptive option, possibly from the data that you gather. Downstream, and I'm using the stream thing, so sorry, the background is a stream. When I first heard upstream, downstream, I was like, what's with the water? We're about electricity. So anyway, downstream is what a lot of utility programs do. It's really hands-on. You're processing projects, doing pre and post site visits, and pretty high quality control and pretty accurate savings. Midstream, this is typically where a utility might provide an incentive or a rebate to the distributor. So it's kind of a buy down at the purchase point through distribution. Again, once you start going midstream downstream, or midstream upstream, you might experience a little bit less quality control. Not saying that it's for sure, but it's not so much hands-on, and utilities can have their different programs and be more involved or not, but historically that's kind of the general definitions of these incentive options. And for CEA or GROW, it's a little bit different market. It's a regulated market. It's also a black market. So the programs and the clients we work with, we're a little concerned about providing incentives to material that could be going to the black market. Not that that's going to happen, but it's something to consider. Is CEA lighting a processing load, or is it a lighting load? Does it go in the lighting program or the non-lighting? Because it is kind of a processing load. We're all familiar with lighting incentive programs for humans, for ambient light or task lighting. This is like a cost to grow something like water or HVAC or something like that, dehumidification. As far as I know, it's the highest lighting power density on record. So if you go back to legacy methodologies and practices, it can be as high as 68 watts per square feet using 1,000 watt HID, including the ballast load. So it's not just 1,000, it's a little higher. It's typically high hours of operation. So your kilowatt hours are going to be, you know, at least 12 hours, 7 days a week, and it goes up from there. Until recently, well, last couple of years, thanks to DLC, and anytime we have an emerging market, we now have a metric we can refer to, the quality products list that DLC has. And it's something that, as a utility, you can insist on or refer to or as equal spec. But they're coming along, and it's really a great resource now to look at a product and see that it's gone through third-party testing. Controls are a big buzzword in the lighting industry, and controls for CEA is, I think, coming along, but historically we're just seeing timers. We will see more advanced controls and are seeing them in greenhouse, however, where you can work with the daylight coming in. But anytime you have something relying on something, like a plant relying on light, and if something fails and the owners can go in and override that, your claim savings could be, well, not quite accurate, but predicted. This is pretty interesting. Many of you probably have seen this, but voting in 2020, last time we checked, the yellow states are voting. It could be for medicinal. It could be for a state that already has medicinal that's voting for recreational. And this is cannabis. Again, I'm focusing on cannabis right now because it's a big hit. What we experienced in the Northwest, we legalized cannabis in 2016, medicinal, I think our first project was in 2013. And it was the gold rush. You may experience that too in other states or have. And we had a lot of growers coming out, get rich quick. Maybe they were great growers, but not so good businessmen, or maybe they were businessmen without a good master grower. Anyway, we had overproduction, and we had overproduction with product and producers. The market settled, just like kind of when everything comes out, a new technology, everybody wants to jump on board, and it kind of culls out the weak. I probably shouldn't have said it that way, but I said it. Going to go through some technologies here. Again, history, legacy or industry standards. So this was the old rule of thumb. So if you hear single-ended high-pressure sodium, that's like way back. That's still used today. It's still something a grower can buy for a pretty cheap price. Single-ended means it just has a screw in on the end here. Double-ended is a little more efficient. It's still 1,000 watts. But the distribution system is more efficient, and you can actually possibly put in a few less double-ended HIDs. Fluorescent for clone and veg, we also saw quite a bit of that, and they're historically T5HOs, 8 lamp, 10 lamp, 12 lamp. And this one right here is a metal halide. Metal halide we would sometimes see in veg. High pressure sodium was also used in veg. The interim between legacy and LED, one of the first ones, again, we went to was induction lighting. And if you're in the lighting industry, you know what induction is. It's basically fluorescent, and it was a pretty good source for vegging because you need lower light levels in a bedroom. But what we found is they were huge, and if they needed more light, they couldn't even fit them in. So the quality was probably good, but it didn't really work out so well with this form factor. Not to say that it wouldn't in the future. Light emitting ceramic. This is a 315 watt metal halide, basically ceramic metal halide. They call it LEC, I think, because it sounds like LED. Maybe a marketing term. This particular product right here has 2 of them in there, so it's a 630 watt nominal lamp watts. So it's going to be a little higher. And for veg, this is a pretty good product. And it's a little lower cost than LED. And in some states, they are still allowing hybrid systems. And a hybrid system is a combination of really any of these technologies, if the utility allows it. And because in the Northwest and the timing of legalization, and LED wasn't quite there yet, utility programs allowed it, hybrid systems. And generally it saved, you know, these are high level numbers, but 30%, 25 to 30% savings using a hybrid system. Lower upfront costs, but higher maintenance costs. And now we have LED, and there's just way too many to even throw up here on the screen. In fact, some of these are probably old, probably outdated. But anyway, you get the point. LED for indoor grow is going to be something more like this type of form factor, where it's solid. The bars work pretty good. It's more flexible. Some manufacturers make them where you can remove and replace. The one here on the left could be used for greenhouse. So if you're doing lighting in a greenhouse, consider shadows. This would cause a lot of shadows and block your free light. This is a virtual case study, and any utility program can do this. Just come up with your incentive programs. But in this case, I'm just going to do a flower room. It's 3,500 square feet. We're going to use the old rule of thumb of 16 square feet per 1,000 watt HPS, 12 hours, 7 days a week. So if you do the math, that's 218 1,000 watt HPS in a 3,500 square foot area. That's about 68 watts per square foot. Just to give you a comparison, in Oregon, new construction and industrial lighting is one of the highest LPDs, and it's 0.9. So if it was 1, this would be 68 times an LPD. So factor that into the grid. The grow light cost about $1,200 each, and that's going to vary, $1,800 to on up. Or I mean, I'm sorry, $800 to even $1,800. So estimated annual savings is about 440,000 kilowatt hours. I use 10 cents as the kilowatt hour rate. The estimated incentive using 15 cents, and obviously that can vary too from 8 to 25, what we've seen in programs. So the customer out of pocket after incentive is 152,000. It's under a 4-year payback. In the Northwest, we have a calculator. We established some cooling load savings. It's a free ride. Less watts means less heat. We all know that. And a very conservative 20%. And we use the SEER of the HVAC system to come up with this. So that drops it to 2.9. Sometimes this gets left out. I use 5 years of costs of relamping HID. And it's only 2.5 relamps in that period, and most likely it's annually. But you take that off because you have a 5-year warranty, and that's kind of the spec too out there. So you should be cost-free as far as maintenance for 5 years. So now we're down to 2.7, and then there's other things you can factor into this to drop that simple payback even more. Once your upfront capital costs has met your investment, you're profiting this annual savings from then on out, even higher because rates could change and things like that. So we like to talk to growers that we like to mention that this is profit. This is an investment that's going to make money. There's 2 different types. Well, there are actually more, but generally you have the open room, single layer, lighting from above. And then for more food, leafy greens and things like that, now that we have LED, the light source can be very close to the plants without causing any excessive heat. You can dim these down. As the plants grow, you can increase the light levels. A little more what we learned in the Northwest. What are the regulations in the state for cannabis? If you're one of the states that's voting it in, find out, because like in Oregon, there was unlimited growers. There was a cap on canopy square feet. But what happened with the gold rush, We had too many growers, and the state changed and said, okay, no more growers. What type of licenses are allowed? So if it's plant-based, number of plants, a little hard to forecast, but if it's number of growers and square footage, things like that are easy to forecast. So find out what's in your state or going to happen. There's opt-in counties or cities that'll could vote on it, and just use all this information to forecast your load growth, forecast your potential savings, and forecast your electrical grid. And this is just for recreational cannabis. So what happened? Hemp came along, and indoor hemp requires the same lighting power density as cannabis. Yeah. So it was just kind of like, hey, we're ready for recreational cannabis, but hemp is a big boom industry right now in some states. They're growing it indoor for seed sales, high-end seeds. They're doing more greenhouse, so we're possibly growing the plants indoor and then planting them out. So what will it take to move your market if you want to provide incentives? What challenges are there for the grower? 3-phase is ideal. We had a lot of rural ones come in the Northwest, and turns out they didn't have 3-phase. They didn't even have enough amperage. They had no idea what this load was going to be. Technologies to consider, LEDs there from cradle to grave. We've seen many case studies. Some growers don't believe in it yet because they have a quality product with their HID, and I don't blame them, because changing the resource to grow a plant could change the quality of it. We're not saying high pressure sodium is bad. It's there's some really good products grown. The trade ally market. This is a little bit different from your traditional contractor electrical distributor. And what we found and established in some areas is a CEA trade ally. And we've had great success working with the LED grow light manufacturers, because they are the experts in this field, most of them. They know how to design a space to give the plant the right light level that it needs. The traditional trade ally can be well trained in lighting for humans. We haven't seen very many yet that can design an environment for CEA. Case studies work great. They tell the real story if you can establish those. It's a really high upfront capital cost, like you saw in the virtual case study. 218 grand just for a 3,500 square foot lighting system. Are there financial options for customers? In the beginning, banks weren't loaning. Some banks and institutions are loaning now. Some vendors have options, easy payment plans, or whatever you want to call it. Maybe the utility would too, so something to consider to get people into this. Education, what DLC is doing with these series is awesome. Data, RII, Resource Innovations Institute, is a great resource to visit for data, and they have the power score. If you're a grower, you can go in and participate in their program. So with that, I'm going to end this with know before you grow. Thank you, and that is a picture of Doug taking a picture of Doug in a 630 watt LEC. I'll hand it off to Tad.
All right. All right. I'm going to take you from West Coast to the Midwest. Wisconsin, we're known as Wisconsin, or America's Dairyland, but we do have some horticultural lighting going on. We don't have legalized cannabis, but we do have some other stuff going on. I'm going to take you through kind of the last 12 months of what we've been doing here in Wisconsin. So I had a kind of steep learning curve, even though I've had 15 years in energy and understand lighting technologies. Found out that horticultural lighting is a whole different subject. I'll talk you through kind of what we did for measures, requirements and what our successes and challenges were. Like I said, it was a steep learning curve. Before I started working with horticultural lighting, I had a full head of hair, and that hair was not gray.
Hey, Chad.
Yeah.
I can't see your screen. I don't know if you're sharing it or not.
You can see your head for the analogy, though.
How about now?
Yep, I see the slides if you want to go full screen.
Yep. All right. So at least the no hair joke worked on that format. Motivations. So what motivated me to push for a new structure for horticultural lighting? One of the things, like Doug was talking about, we don't have cannabis legal here in Wisconsin yet, but I wanted to prepare for that because, like he said, a lot of the states are have this as something that is on the agenda. I've talked to other states. For instance, our neighbor to the east, Michigan, and they had stories of everything from bowling alleys being converted to grow operations to 500,000 square foot former manufacturing facilities. So I was like, I heard that and I said, wow, we don't have a lot of horticultural lighting incentives that we process in a year, but this has the potential to be something very big in a hurry. So wanted to get our state poised for that with some offerings that were easy for trade allies and customers, but yet moved the market. So that's my second point there, is that the existing horticultural lighting, it was a little bit cumbersome for trade allies, customers, and it really didn't feel it was moving the market. So this was something that we continue to work on as we roll out the horticultural lighting offerings for the state. Then I had my personal experience as a construction manager. So kind of the last thing I want to worry about in a day is providing a lot of information for calculations. I've got literally 100 things going on. I want a program that, I'm happy to get the information, and I'm open-minded to a different technology, in these projects, but I want it to be easy. I don't want it to be a burden on my time or anyone else's when a project's starting to move. I didn't want to leave out smaller customers. Sometimes, when you have a custom incentive, and I'll describe the differences between these different offerings that we have, but with the custom, sometimes the smaller customers won't apply or won't be engaged with that just because of the potential for a lot of paperwork. Oops. All right, so the first thing I wanted to get established was prescriptive measures. So prescriptives are something, and they'll vary from program to program, but for our program, you fill out your application, you include receipts, you work with one of our energy advisors during the process, but you don't submit until after the project is done. And the amount of paperwork that the trade ally or customer has to fill out is low compared to other options. We started doing this for non-stacked indoor farms and greenhouses. We excluded vertical farming. When you're listening to Doug, there are a lot of different lighting options. That's one of the issues with prescriptive measures, is that we don't want to have, 50 different measures out there. We wanted to limit the number of measures. So vertical farming was excluded for now. We may, incorporate that. I absolutely want to incorporate that and move it towards prescriptive in the future. But for now, I'm just taking it one step at a time. We're offering $50 to $120 a fixture. That depends on fixture wattage and then facility type. Like Doug was talking about, and Casey a little bit, is you'll have different hours of use in different situations for different plant types. So we have to, spend our dollars wisely, and so I'll show you the next slide. We provide the incentive kind of in a cascading order based on how much energy is saved in each measure type. So if you have a larger, higher wattage HID that you're replacing in an environment where there are more hours, then you're going to get a larger incentive. One of the drawbacks of prescriptive measures is that they're not as precise. You lose the potential for some savings. So you'll see we were trying to capture LEDs less than 700 watts, for instance, replacing a 1,000 watt. I know that you can replace a 1,000 watt HID with something of a lower wattage with an LED, but I wanted to capture and be conservative when we do have an evaluation cycle, so that we can absolutely prove that we are getting those numbers for the full range of applications that come through. Hybrid measures. So we also included a hybrid measure. Anything that's a non one-for-one retrofit, so they're basically redesigning the space or new construction. We require a baseline project design and then an efficient design. So hybrid measures, in contrast to prescriptive measures, we gather more data on the project, number of fixtures, wattage, that sort of thing, and run a calculation. But this is also something that does not require pre-approval. It won't slow down the construction process once it starts going. We also made it eligible for facilities that are non-stacked indoor farms or greenhouses. The vertical farming, again, we push towards custom. So those, we do work with vertical farming, and I just had one of these for like 2,500 fixtures come in this week for technical review. And so we need to do a pre-approval on those. It's a lot more paperwork. And so that's how we're handling it until we can get, this thing evolved completely. Incentive for the hybrid, 6 cents kilowatt hour saved based on those calculations. And then we limit it to 50% of the cost of the fixture. And there's that illustrated there. Requirements. This is where DLC really helps me out, or construction manager, customer, or whoever, trade ally. We use the DLC listed products for our measures, non-horticultural lighting measures, and it's great. That fixture is going to be a quality fixture. It's going to meet the requirements, the technical requirements that DLC has set forth. So it's a great tool. 15 years ago, I got firsthand experience as to a project and how things can go wrong if you don't have something like this. I was promoting a new lighting technology, and luckily these things failed really fast. Because we could then tell the rest of the people that we had suggested it to that it was a bad idea. But we had fixtures failing within hours and days. And so lesson learned, I was once burned twice shy on fixtures that are not certified in some way, shape, or form. So it is, I am very happy that DLC has a horticultural lighting option there. One of the things that we did though, when I started doing this about a year ago, the list wasn't, that DLC had qualified wasn't a real long, but it has grown tremendously in the last 12 months or more. And so we will be transitioning to DLC listed, just making that a requirement of our program. Right now, we're going with a PPE that's a little higher than what is the current DLC requirement, and then warranty and some other items there. Successes. The horticultural lighting world is of experts is a rather small one from what I've found out, but they are all just about everyone that I talked to was extremely generous with their time. Worked with Casey and Leora at DLC. I talked to Derek Smith at RII. I think Doug mentioned him as well. People in other states who are putting together the same thing that I am. Manufacturers, although the manufacturers will tell you that you need to put more money towards incentives, of course. But just a variety of people that helped work on this, and it is a great group. The prescriptive option was another success. It's been welcomed by trade allies, the contractors out there and the customers as something that's easy. And then, the range of offerings is easy to apply for and understand with what we've got set up. Some of the challenges, I've been doing the energy, calculations, projects, that sort of stuff for quite a while. And I think lighting people intentionally put a lot of jargon and science in behind what's going on. It is a confusing world. It is a steep learning curve. But like I said, everybody that I've reached out to has been great. Calculating baseline numbers for HID. So in putting together a prescriptive offering, not just HIDs, but fluorescence, it was tough getting good numbers from reliable sources. There is information out there, but not a lot of it. Another challenge is just requiring the lighting design for hybrid projects. Most of these projects are big, and so they're getting a design done anyway. But for the smaller people, if they're not doing a one-for-one or if they're new construction, it is a bit of a challenge. We had to keep baselines conservative, so we're losing some savings on if for claims as far as our program. We hope to keep honing that in as time passes, but that was one thing that we had to do, a little bit of a compromise. And then, of course, like I said, we got to develop, I'm pushing towards a prescriptive offering for vertical farms. This is something that has been fairly popular in our state, and I don't see it going away. Oops. Sorry. And then, I said that everybody was very helpful. I want to be a part of that. So my contact information is here. I can let you know what I've learned and hopefully keep you away from some pitfalls. So definitely reach out. And with that, I will hand it back over.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tad. That was great. Thank you, Tad, Doug, and Casey. I want to roll us right into a Q&A question, and if folks are encouraged to share questions you might have, but just to kick us off, based on all of you were going right up to the line with this, and some of you were even mentioning some specific examples, like those best practice guides that RII developed with all sorts of great subject matter experts. So my question for you is, what sort of on-demand resources do you think utilities need to be pushing to the market, especially so that, both of you really made the point, we got to do this, we got to be proactive. It's got to be ahead of time. It can't be waiting for them to come to us. So maybe start with Doug, then Tad. Please respond to that.
Sure, John. On-demand resources. So support to this new market. If utilities have the budget, utility personnel that are somewhat educated that can work in this market. So for example, we kind of have an intake form we send out just to gather some information from the growers, and just get a personal relationship with this project, whoever's involved, and do some quick calcs. You can do them for lighting, you can do them pretty quick, and it gives them a budget, and that's what I like to call it, as a budget, not an estimate, to see if they want to go further. And it's a chance for you to advise them on the pros and cons of the market. And if you have experience, you can throw some of that in there. So that's my first answer. I could probably talk forever, but I'll let someone else talk.
Yeah, we have a network here where we have it's top 5 ways to save, things like that online, and then that we're also sending to customers, trade allies, all those sort of things, so that we can funnel them back to our experts and give them the information they need before they start down the path of working on a project. So when they're in the research stage.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that's something, all of us getting together here, it's a shared community. We have other opportunities, but it seems like that's a constant area of interest that's really growing with a lot of folks. People wanting to be proactive, but not sure what specific information to make available on their website, or wanting to make sure, because a lot of times utilities don't have a Doug Opedal 150 projects under their belt. They want to push, responsible, well-written, but also accounting for the utility perspective information, right? And I think it's out there, and it helps if we rally around it. Certainly nobody's saying, no, let's take just wait for these cultivators, the grow community, to come to us. I want to ask another question here. I'm going to shift and just kind of, rather than trying to tease this one out, I want to just go straight to like asking the question in a way that maybe puts y'all on the spot. So can you think of a project or a product that you wouldn't incentivize? I don't want you to call out a company name, but like a lot of times utilities are like, DLC list is great, we want it to be on the DLC list, and then we all understand, especially the case when there might not be a product category in place yet, or we're working towards something like that. But have you seen situations come up where you're like, this isn't right, the utility shouldn't be incentivizing this? And I'm not talking about the black market element, just to take that off the table. I'm talking, have you seen a product that has made you say, I don't think this is right? Yeah, can either of you share or speak to having that example?
Yeah, we've had a few cases where a proposal's been made through a vendor or whoever, we'll just keep it generic, and it's basically HID lighting, or high bay lighting. It has no spectral quality really or anything like that. So, we've learned that. It's a question that, and they're used to selling that, so that's what they proposed, and they're going to get 800 to 1,000 ppfd. So they thought, well, actually they use foot candles, so that's another indicator. So yeah, and then other technologies, legacy. I haven't seen too many things proposed as far as off the wall. Plasma has been proposed, and I think plasma is a very good source. However, at the moment it seems to be pretty high cost. It doesn't, in most cases, and sorry if there's any plasma people on the line, but there's more products for all the other technologies, more wattages available too. So that's my input.
Thanks, Doug.
Yeah, and I've lived the nightmare. So with referring my customers with a bad project that didn't work out, a product that didn't work out. So Yeah, there are definitely projects that I will not approve or stand behind, and the DLC, stamp on it really makes that easy for me.
That's great. Yeah, like I think the market benefits from that clarity as well, which is something that that helps. So great to hear. Well, I think we have time for one last question, and I want to squeeze it in just because I think it's really a nice dovetail to the second half here of the program. There's been a lot of chit chat just on this call about the nascent moves to put prescriptive incentives in place. And we all, everybody on this call, I believe, understands the value of the prescriptive incentives. It lubricates the cogs of the industry, more known quantities, things can happen faster. But at the exact same time, it seems like we're seeing so many different approaches to the CEA market, and especially with lighting. So I just want to get your kind of high level, maybe it can be the pitch for if you're able to join in the second hour, Tad and Doug, just high level thoughts on moving towards prescriptive. How big of a lift is it for your utility, and is it something that you think the utilities you represent are really focused on? Please just talk to that a little bit.
Sorry, Tad, I guess I've jumped in line again. You being a utility, working with utility, just fresh on it, you'll have some good input. But yeah, prescriptive, my first slide, I talked about the different options. Custom, which is cents per kWh, and prescriptive. Prescriptive's generally just the easiest way to go. In our experience, everybody knows what it is, and it's not subject to getting kicked out because it's not cost effective in some utility programs. However, custom can control gaming, pricing the customer too high, so that, hey, there's no incentive. All you need to lower your costs, or you're putting too much profit on it. And we're not against profit at all. It's a good tool to enter a market like this. So yeah, prescriptive. Personally, you think it works well. And I touched on the other stream options, right? Downstream, midstream.
Yeah, and I'm going to echo what Doug had to say there. They each have their merits. There are situations where a hybrid or a custom type measure structure is what works best for everybody involved. But prescriptive sure is nice from the fact that our advisors can pitch it pretty easily. Trade allies, customers, it's much easier all the way around, less intensive on the paperwork side, and just some of the issues that come along with time to fill out that custom paperwork. So I'm pushing our stuff towards prescriptive, but there's still a place for customs.
All right, thank you very much.
I think, John, we need to wrap this portion up. And I know there are a lot of people that put some chat questions in there. We will make sure that we address those chat questions and get you answers or some commentary around those. So with that, let me just wrap up this portion for us. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. This is our first webinar Wednesday presentation. I want to thank our moderator, John, and our panelists, Casey, Tad, and Doug.